was a regular Thursday morning, the kind where alarms buzz, coffee brews, and the world moves at its usual rhythm. Inside the Toyota of Berkeley Certified Service Center, employees settled into their routines, making small talk, checking schedules, and preparing for another busy day. Among them was 24-year-old Alana Gallen. She took her seat at her desk in the call center, just like she had every other morning for the past 3 years. Phones rang, keyboards clicked, conversations blended into background noise. At a glance, nothing seemed out of place. But in the next few moments, the calm of that ordinary morning would be destroyed. At 11:15 a.m., the front doors opened. A man walked in. His presence barely registered at first. He wasn't a stranger. In fact, he was someone Alana had known for years, someone she had once trusted. And then, a single movement changed everything. The sharp crack of gunfire cut through the dealership. The sound was deafening, unnatural, a noise that didn't belong in a place meant for work, for routine, for life to move forward. In an instant, Alana was gone. Her dreams, her future, her son's tomorrow, all stolen in a single heartbeat. The man who pulled the trigger wasn't finished yet. As chaos erupted, he made his way upstairs. Employees ran. Police rushed to the scene. A second round of gunfire followed. By the time officers secured the building, 2 people were dead, and an entire community was left searching for answers. How did it come to this? To understand what happened on that September morning, we need to go back to the story of a young mother doing everything she could to create a future for her son, and to a man who refused to let her go. A man who walked into that dealership with one intention, and one intention only. At 24 years old, Alana Gallen was the kind of person who left a lasting impression without even trying. Her presence wasn't loud or attention-seeking, yet she had a way of making people feel at ease. Those who knew her best described her as soft-spoken but strong-willed, a woman who carried herself with quiet determination. There was something about her, a warmth that made even the most stressful days feel a little lighter. At the Toyota of Berkeley Certified Service Center, where she worked in the call center, she was known for her patience. Customers could be demanding, coworkers could have bad days, yet Alana never let it shake her. No matter how hectic things got, she kept her composure, offering the same calm, steady voice on the other end of the line. She wasn't just doing a job. She was building a future, one that revolved around one person, her son, King. For 7-year-old King, Alana was everything. She was his safe place, his biggest cheerleader, the person who made sure he never went without. Every shift she worked, every extra hour she picked up, every sleepless night she endured, it was all for him. She had a vision for his future, a future filled with opportunities, security, and dreams that stretched beyond the limitations of their circumstances. Even at her young age, Alana had a maturity that came from knowing what was at stake. She wasn't just thinking about next week's paycheck. She was thinking about college funds, sports activities, and stability. She wasn't waiting for life to hand her success. She was actively building it, brick by brick, day by day. Yet, despite the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, she still found time for the little things that mattered most. Bedtime stories, homework sessions, after-school conversations about his day. Even when exhaustion pulled at her, she made sure King always felt her presence. She wanted him to know that no matter how hard she worked, she was never too busy for him. Her mother, Yovanda, saw it all. She watched her daughter push through the exhaustion, stretch every dollar, and never once complain. Alana wasn't just a mother. She was a provider, a protector, a woman determined to break the cycle. And then there was her work ethic. For 3 years, she had been a familiar face at the dealership, but that was only one piece of her daily grind. She worked 3 jobs, the call center, a car rental company, and a grocery store, balancing them all without ever letting it show. The sheer willpower it took to keep up with the schedule was something most people couldn't comprehend. The long hours, the lack of sleep, the constant juggling act of responsibilities. And yet, Alana never complained. She kept pushing forward, determined to provide her son with a life that was better than the one she had. But behind the stability she worked so hard to create, there was something else she had to navigate. Something that made moving forward more complicated than it should have been. Her past. Because Alana Gallen wasn't just a hardworking mother trying to create a better future. She was also a woman who had once shared a life with a man who refused to let go. A man named Lamar Walker. For years, Alana had tried to set boundaries, to separate their worlds, to ensure that whatever relationship they once had existed only in the past. She had made her choice. She had moved on. But that didn't mean Lamar had accepted it. Those closest to her noticed the shift when he returned to California. At first, it seemed like a simple co-parenting situation. Lamar wanted to be involved in King's life, and for King's sake, Alana allowed it. She wasn't unreasonable. She wasn't vindictive. She only wanted what was best for her son. But what happens when one person sees boundaries as barriers to be broken? What happens when moving on isn't seen as a personal decision, but as a rejection? Because Lamar Walker didn't just want to be a father. He wanted a second chance. And Alana wasn't interested. She had built something on her own, a life, a routine, a sense of security that she wasn't willing to sacrifice. She had found strength in independence, and she wasn't going to let anyone take that away. But when does persistence become pressure? When does desire turn into a refusal to accept reality? In the months leading up to September 21st, 2023, Alana had been clear about her boundaries. She had drawn the line. She had told Lamar exactly where they stood. But what if someone refuses to listen? What if they convince themselves that no doesn't really mean no? What if they decide that if they can't have you, then no one else can? Alana never spoke much about the details of their conversations. She kept her personal life separate from work, never allowing her private struggles to spill into her professional space. But something shifted in those final months. Her mother saw it. Her family noticed it. The way her smile faded when Lamar's name came up. The way her body tensed when she spoke about his presence in California. The way she brushed off concerns, as if pretending things were normal would make them so. She didn't let it show at work. She never missed a shift. She never let the weight of her reality pull her down. Because that's who she was. A fighter. A mother. A woman determined to move forward. She believed that if she just focused on what mattered, if she just kept pushing forward, things would be okay. Until one day, they weren't. Until one day, Lamar Walker walked into the dealership with a gun. Until one day, the future she had fought so hard to build was taken away in an instant. How does someone make a decision like that? What goes through a person's mind before they cross the line from anger to destruction? To understand the events of that morning, we have to go deeper. Because Alana had spent years building a future. And in the span of a few seconds, Lamar Walker made sure she would never see it. The morning of September 21st, 2023 began like any other for Alana Gallen. The rhythm of her daily life followed its usual course, waking up early, making sure her son, King, was ready for school, and then heading off to work at Toyota of Berkeley Certified Service Center. Inside the dealership, the atmosphere was calm. Employees settled into their tasks. Phones rang with customer inquiries, and technicians in the service bays prepared for another busy day. Alana took her seat at her desk in the call center. She had done this hundreds of times before. The headset rested comfortably over her ear. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to pull up customer records. She greeted a coworker passing by with a polite nod, unaware that she was being watched. At 11:15 a.m., the front doors opened. Lamar Walker stepped inside. He moved with intent. No hesitation, no uncertainty. His presence did not immediately raise alarms. He had been here before, had walked these halls when he and Alana were still connected. Some employees recognized him. Others barely noticed him at all. Alana was focused on her screen, answering a call when he approached. She didn't see him right away. The moment she did, something in her shifted. A flicker of recognition, followed by something else. Walker spoke to her. The exact words exchanged between them remain unknown. Witnesses recall a brief exchange, 10, maybe 15 seconds of conversation. His posture was rigid, his voice controlled but firm. Whatever he said, it didn't last long. Then, without warning, he reached into his pocket. In a fraction of a second, the air inside the dealership transformed. A metallic glint. A single motion. A sharp crack split the air. A gunshot. For an instant, time seemed to stop. The ordinary sounds of the dealership, the distant hum of conversation, the clicking of keyboards, the whirring of tools in the service bays vanished, swallowed by the deafening echo of that first shot. Then chaos. People scrambled. Chairs toppled over. Screams tore through the air. Employees ducked behind desks, sprinted toward exits, their minds struggling to grasp what had just happened. Alana collapsed. She never got a chance to run, never had time to react. The bullet struck her at point-blank range, ensuring that she wouldn't survive. She was gone before anyone could reach her. The dealership, a place she had walked into that morning expecting nothing more than another shift, had become a crime scene. But Walker wasn't finished. In the confusion, as panic rippled through the building, he turned and walked toward the stairs. Employees who had been frozen in shock moments earlier now ran in every direction, desperate to get away. Some fled through side exits, others ducked into offices and locked the doors behind them. In an instant, the Toyota Service Center had become a place of fear. Walker made his way to the second floor. What was going through his mind at that moment? Did he intend to take more lives? Was this always the plan? The answer never came. Minutes after the first shot was fired, the sound of approaching sirens cut through the air. Police were already closing in. Officers from both the Berkeley and Albany police departments arrived, weapons drawn, rushing into a situation that was still unfolding. They didn't know what they were walking into. The only thing they knew for certain was that a shooter was inside the building. They moved quickly, directing terrified employees out of the building while making their way upstairs. Then a confrontation. Walker was still armed. He was still moving. When police reached him, they ordered him to drop his weapon. He didn't. Instead, he raised it. And in that moment, everything ended. 5 officers fired. The sound of gunfire echoed through the building once again, marking the final moments of an event that had already stolen too much. When officers reached him, Walker was on the floor, mortally wounded, and beside him, Alana's lifeless body. The entire ordeal had lasted minutes. In that short span of time, a woman's life was taken, a child was left without a mother, and an entire community was thrust into grief.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Alex Savage.
And I'm Heather Holmes. The family of Alana Gallen says that they are frustrated and asking for answers from police as they try to make sense of her killing that happened last week.
KTVU's Bailey O'Carroll joining us now live. And Bailey, you spoke with the family today. What did they tell you?
That's right, Heather and Alex. The family told me they are in shock and sad that 24-year-old Alana Gallen was killed in what they say was a senseless shooting. They told me that they're also frustrated by the lack of answers police have given them.
I would want to die before my kids. I don't want to see none of my kids. I don't want any parent to have to ever go through this. None whatsoever.
Yvonne Gallen is the mother of 24-year-old Alana Gallen, who was shot and killed by the father of her 7-year-old son, King. According to police, the gunman entered the Toyota dealership on Thursday before noon and shot Gallen. When police arrived, they shot and killed the suspect. But Gallen says right now there's more questions than answers.
Everything was, I don't know. I don't know. We don't have all the information.
Gallen said her daughter loved life, but said her priority was her son.
Her 7-year-old child doesn't have a mother or a father. And that's saddening for me. I told him that his mom and his father was gone. He just laid his head back and said, no, they not. And after that, he's been crying. We all broke out crying. He's been seeing him cry, everyone cry.
Gallen says her daughter was not in a relationship with her alleged killer at the time of the shooting, but instead that the two were co-parenting King together. Gallen says now both parents are gone, all because of a senseless act.
It's going to be hard for me, hard for my family, of course, because she was very much loved by everyone. Everyone loved my daughter. And that her son, he's going to need therapy. I'm going to need therapy.
The family has started a GoFundMe account to help with the therapy costs for King and help with the eventual cost of his college education. In the newsroom, I'm Bailey O'Carroll, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
All right, Bailey, thank you.
Alana was gone. She had spent 24 years watching her daughter grow, supporting her through challenges, celebrating her successes. And now, in an instant, all of that had been taken away. How do you even begin to process that kind of loss? How does a mother explain to a 7-year-old boy that his mother won't be coming home? How does a child, barely old enough to understand the world, process the fact that the person who was supposed to protect him, guide him, love him through every stage of life, is never coming back? The weight of that realization was just beginning to settle in, because this wasn't just about one crime. It was about a pattern, a reality that plays out in workplaces across the country more often than people realize. Most people don't think about danger when they walk into work each morning. They think about meetings, deadlines, lunch breaks. They assume that their office, their store, their service center is a place where things will unfold as they always do, predictably, safely. But for millions of people, work is the most dangerous place they go all day. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, workplace homicides account for nearly 10% of all fatal occupational injuries. That number alone is alarming, but the deeper reality is even more chilling. Thousands of these cases are rooted in domestic violence. For women, the workplace is one of the most dangerous places to be when an abusive ex-partner refuses to let go. Because when someone leaves a relationship, they often change everything: their phone number, their routines, even their address. But what they can't change is where they work. That's what makes workplaces a prime target for abusers. An abusive ex may not know where their former partner sleeps at night, but they know where they work. They know the schedule, the break times, the entrances and exits. They know exactly where to find them. That's why experts believe the actual number of workplace homicides tied to domestic violence is higher than reported. Because in many cases, these incidents aren't officially classified as domestic violence homicides. They're just labeled as workplace shootings. That classification erases the root of the problem, and it keeps workplaces from addressing the very real threat that so many employees face. Which raises a terrifying question. How many tragedies like Alana's could have been prevented if workplaces treated domestic violence as the danger it really is? Alana had done everything she could to separate herself from Lamar Walker. She had ended their relationship. She had kept their contact limited to co-parenting. She had refused to let him back into her life romantically. She had been firm, clear, and consistent. And yet, none of that had protected her. Because what happens when someone refuses to accept no? What happens when rejection is seen as a challenge instead of a boundary? Walker had wanted control over a situation that was no longer his to control. When he realized he couldn't get it back, he took something else instead. That's the part people struggle to understand. Because for most, it's impossible to fathom the kind of mind that believes if they can't have someone, no one can. It's the kind of obsession that turns deadly. And Alana paid the price for it. In the aftermath of the shooting, there was an outpouring of grief and support for Alana's son, King. People donated to a GoFundMe campaign to secure his future, ensuring that he had financial support for education, therapy, and the sports dreams his mother had worked so hard to nurture. But money doesn't bring a mother back. It doesn't replace bedtime stories. It doesn't fill the empty seat at school events. It doesn't silence the questions a child will have as he grows up, trying to understand why his mother isn't here. And that's why this story can't just be another tragic case that fades into memory. Because if nothing changes, this will happen again. It will happen to another woman trying to move on from a toxic relationship. It will happen to another workplace that never thought violence would find them. It will happen to another child who doesn't deserve to lose a parent. And so the question remains, what is being done to stop it? Workplaces have security measures to prevent theft, to protect assets, to monitor customer disputes. But how many have policies in place to protect employees from known threats? 65% of U.S. companies don't have a workplace violence policy that specifically addresses domestic violence. That's a gaping hole in safety, one that directly puts employees at risk. Because the truth is, many women in abusive relationships don't report their concerns at work. They worry about being seen as a problem, about being judged, about losing their jobs. And so they stay silent. That silence allows situations to escalate. And when they do, when the worst happens, everyone is left wondering if it could have been stopped. Here's what workplaces must start doing to prevent more tragedies like Alana's. Create personal safety plans for employees facing domestic violence threats. Implement security measures that include screening for known threats. Train managers and HR personnel to recognize signs of domestic abuse. Encourage employees to report safety concerns without fear of losing their jobs. Because until these steps become standard, more lives will be lost. More families will grieve. More children will grow up with a gap in their lives that no amount of support can truly fill. When we hear about cases like Alana's, the reaction is always the same: shock, outrage, sadness. But after a few weeks, attention moves on. Another story dominates the headlines. Another tragedy takes center stage. Another family's grief becomes just another statistic. But Alana was not a statistic. She was a mother, a daughter, a hard-working woman with dreams that should have been realized. She had a life that deserved to be protected. And now, the responsibility falls on all of us to make sure her story doesn't just fade away. Because this isn't just about Alana. It's about every woman trapped in a situation where no isn't accepted. It's about every workplace that isn't prepared for the reality of domestic violence spilling into their doors. It's about the lives that can still be saved, if only we stop looking away. Alana Gallen's story is more than just a crime. It is a devastating reminder of what happens when warning signs are ignored, when workplaces fail to protect employees, and when a woman's right to move on is met with deadly resistance. A 7-year-old boy is now growing up without his mother because a man refused to accept that his time in her life was over. A family has been shattered. A community has been left reeling. And the worst part, Alana did everything right. She set boundaries. She focused on her son. She worked tirelessly to build a future free from the past that tried to pull her back in. And yet, it wasn't enough. This should make every single one of us stop and ask, how many more lives will be lost before real change happens? How many more women will be killed at their jobs, in their homes, in parking lots, in places they should have been safe? How many more children will be left without parents because someone decided that if they couldn't have them, no one else could? And what can we do about it? The truth is, tragedies like this thrive in silence. When people look away, ignore the warning signs, assume it's someone else's problem. But it's not just someone else's problem. It's a community problem, a workplace problem, a societal problem. And that's why it's time to do more than just listen. Here's how you can help. Broken Heart, share this video, because you never know who might need to hear this. Maybe it's someone in a dangerous situation. Maybe it's someone in HR who can push for real safety policies at work. Maybe it's someone who can make a difference before it's too late. Push pin, drop a comment below. Let's talk about real solutions. Do you know of local resources for victims of domestic violence? Have you or someone you know been in a similar situation? Your comment could be the thing that helps someone else. Loudspeaker, hit the like button, because the more engagement this video gets, the more the algorithm pushes it out. That means more awareness, more people hearing Alana's story, and more chances to prevent the next tragedy. Police Scar Light, and if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel, because we need to keep talking about the stories that matter. Stories that don't always make the headlines.